Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics, and I just got done writing a new pattern, and to make it, we're going to need a nice, hot, delicious honey bun. Well, actually, not one of these honey buns. We're going to be using these. Now, this is a pre-cut called a honey bun. It's similar to a jelly roll. It's made up of a lot of different strips, but these are cut 1.5 inches wide. So they have a finished size of 1 inch. Jelly roll strips are cut 2.5 inches wide and they finish 2 inches. So this is basically half as wide as a jelly roll. Now the project we're making is a wall hanging, and I've got a little bit of it done so you can get an idea of what the pattern looks like. And what we need to make this is 35 honey bun strips. Now these usually come 40 in a roll, so I'm going to use 35 of the darker ones here. And then we're going to need 50 5-inch squares. So you can get that out of a yard, or you can use pre-cut charms, which is what I'm going to use today. Now the free pattern, this is not the final version of it. I will get it typed up nicely, and I'll put in some pictures and some diagrams. And if you're going to make this project, I would recommend you get the pattern by clicking the link below that says free pattern. And that way you can watch the video, you can look at the pattern, and it will help you so you don't make a mistake when you're cutting or sewing. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull off the strips that I'm not going to use. I want to use ones that have good contrast with the background there, and some of these are pretty light. So I'm just going to take them out and put them aside. Now I've got these at the sewing machine, and all I'm going to do is pick off 5 different strips. Doesn't really matter which ones, but I'm going to get different colors. So let's get a green and maybe a red, maybe this red because it's a different print. And we'll get a tan one and a brown one and maybe a stripe. So just 5 different strips, doesn't really matter which ones, and we're going to sew them side by side. Now, these have pinked edges, so when we stitch them together, our seam allowance actually starts at the inner part of that pinked edge. So you have to, it kind of feels like you're taking your seam a little bit deeper than normal. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about not stretching your strips. We have customers who write us who say, I made a strip unit and it looks a little wonky and it's not laying flat, and that's because you're stretching the top or the bottom. So pull these way far away from you. Don't stretch either one. Grab them firmly back here and then stitch. That way neither the top nor the bottom can travel in faster. The bottom generally wants to travel in faster because we've got our feed dog underneath there and it's pulling that fabric. But if you grab them way far away here, way back by your stomach, and then feed it a little at a time, nothing will stretch and your strip unit will come out nice and flat. Now when you get to the end, you're going to want to finger press, and we're just going to press to one side. So I like to go to the top, open it up so the seam is going that way, pull it apart a little, and draw your finger down that seam. And this is opening it up. I'm using my hands like the palm of my thumbs there and pulling down. And this makes, especially with these little strips, they're hard to iron if you don't finger press it first. So now I'm going to add another strip, just a different color. And again, I'm going to be real careful to not stretch anything. And I'm going to use a seam allowance that just feels slightly deeper than normal because we've got those pinked edges. And I actually want this strip unit to turn out a little smaller than when we use a normal 1/4 inch seam. So take that seam slightly bigger than a 1/4 inch. So I went ahead and stitched all 5 strips together, and the seam allowances are all laying to one side. It doesn't matter if they're going right or left, just put them all going one way. Now I'm going to smooth it out on my ironing board here, And I like to iron with a dry iron first, kind of smoothing out as I go. And then I'm going to add steam. So let's take this right over to the cutting board and line it up on one of your lines. Get your plastic ruler, and we're going to cut it into 5-inch widths. So we'll make a nice first cut here to get it straight. And then every 5 inches. Now, because I used a seam allowance that was slightly bigger than 1/4 inch, my strip unit is coming out just a touch over 5 inches. And that's what I want. If it comes out a little bigger, it's okay. We're going to trim it off later. But I'm trying to head for just a little bit over 5 inches. Now, I went ahead and used the exact same procedure for all the rest of my strips. And what I ended up with is 7 strip units. And I cut all of those into 5-inch squares. Now we need to mark the back side of the charm square. So I'm going to make a diagonal line right across the back here. So put your plastic ruler from corner to corner, and I like to use a sharp pencil with a very light line. So go ahead and mark the back of 50 of your squares. Now take all of your squares, your strip squares and your plain squares, back to the machine, and we're going to make half square triangles. So we're going to take one of these squares and we're going to put this right down on top of it. And it's okay that it's not quite the same size. Just center it up, and now we're going to stitch down one side and back up the other 1/4 inch away from that drawn line. So my presser foot happens to be 1/4 inch wide. So I can put the outside of the presser foot here right on the line and stitch all the way down. Turn it around and go right down the other side. Now the one thing you want to do is you want to have all your squares turned the same way. So you see how I have the long strip on this edge, not the pieced strip. I'm going to start the next one exactly the same way with the line going like this. So don't turn it this way and put this on. Keep them all facing the same way with the long one on the right there and the line facing this way, and just sew them all together. The next step is to square these up. So you can see on this one, the strip unit is a little bit wider than my 5-inch charm square. So I like to take this and put it right on some lines. So I'm going to trim everything that's outside of these lines right here. So I've got the edge of the charm square pretty much on the line, and the strip, which is behind it, the strip part, I'm going to cut off that extra. Then I'm just going to move this over here. And now I know that this is exactly 5 inches wide. Now we don't really have to trim it the other way, because remember when we made the strip unit and cut it, we cut that exactly 5 inches. So now this is 5 inches square, and we can go ahead and cut along our pencil line. And now we have 2 half square triangles, pieced on one side and plain on the other. Now we want to iron the blocks open. So I'm going to put the pieced side down on my ironing board, and I'm going to peel the background square open, and I'm going to press it with my hands a little bit. I'm trying to make sure this seam stays straight and doesn't bow or go up. Now the reason I'm pressing this towards the light fabric, which is the opposite way we normally do it, is because there's all these extra seams here, and the fabrics really want to go in that direction. Normally, if you press everything towards the light and your seam allowances are not perfect. So you've got a little bit of dark fabric showing. When you make your quilt, you'll get some shadowing there, which doesn't look very good. But we rotary cut these with a blade, so they're all exactly the same size. There's no possibility that any of the dark is sticking off. So this is just a much easier way to iron your blocks. Iron towards the light. The last step we have to do is to trim off these little pointy things that are sticking beyond the edge of the block. So I like to just take some sharp scissors and cut that off, and cut that off, and now the block is done. I've got all the blocks for the wall hanging done, and I'm ready to lay it out. Now I'm going to start in the middle of the quilt, of the wall hanging, because I'm going to make a big star. So I'm going to put 4 of the dark sections in the middle. Then I'm going to start putting some, what will end up being star points around this. It's going to take a little bit of laying out before we actually see what it's going to look like, but it gets easier as you go. All right, so there's the star. Now we can just start filling around it. So I'm going to put some light corners up next to it. And then I'm going to start surrounding it with bigger and bigger lines of the patchwork. And I'm not worrying too much at this point about which fabrics are going to be next to which, unless I get something like this, where it looks like it's all the same. So I'm just going to trade this one out for a block that has different pieces in it. So you can start to see a big diamond starting to form around here. So I'm basically just making a long diagonal light and a long diagonal dark. And then when I get to the middle of the wall hanging here, then I'm going to change direction and go back up the other way. All right, there is the last bit there. So this is square. It's 10 squares by 10 squares. So I've got a total of 100 squares in it. Now all I have to do is make the rows and sew the rows together. I've got the first 2 rows stitched together. There's a couple things you want to keep in mind when you're making the rows. I finger pressed the first row with all the seams going this way, and the next row they're all going the opposite way, and that way when we come to put these together, it won't be very thick and bulky and it'll be easy to match. The other thing is these seams do not line up. It's very easy to stitch all these together, but you're not supposed to line them up. They're not meant to line up. It's meant to have a nice scrappy look. As a bonus, it makes it real easy to put the blocks together. So the top is all done, and I'm just getting the back put together. But before we finish everything, I want to talk about the quilting just a little bit. Now, a wall hanging size quilt, it is small enough that you can put on your regular machine to do the quilting. You could quilt in the ditch here. You could outline the star. That'd be kind of fun. You could do something a little fancier, but I've got the big Gamble quilting machine. So I'm going to go ahead and load this up on here and get it finished. For thread color, I'm thinking I want to use a thread that will show up a little bit in all of these really light areas. So any of these colors will work, but let's see what they're going to look like on top of that light. That's going to show up surprisingly quite a bit. The red is what I thought would look really good. Nice dark green, nice soft brown. I really think that this gold here is going to show up enough, but it's going to look really good on all of the patchwork here. So let's go with that color. For the quilting pattern, I'm going to use this one called Holly. It's got leaves and holly berries, and that's perfect for this quilt because the quilt has some holly, it has some trees, but they're not actually Christmas trees. So this is a nice quilt that will last all winter long, and this pattern is just perfect on it. I've got the wall hanging all done, and I really wanted to bring it home and hang it up and see what it looked like on my wall. It's just perfect for this space here. I have kind of a big wall, but if you had a smaller one, it would still look good. It's 41 inches square, good size for a wall, also would work for a table topper. I'm very happy with the quilting. You can see the little holly berries, you can see the leaves, and I just put a black binding around it. I thought that framed it very nicely. So if you want to try out a project with a honey bun, this would be a fun one for you to start with. Thanks for watching our tutorial today on how to make the honey bun star. We hope you enjoyed it. Now, if you have any questions that I didn't answer within the video, you can leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to get back to you. Now, there's one more thing. We're having a giveaway. So I got my husband Matt to help us out. And this is a quilt called Strip Tube Lattice. You might have seen the video where we showed you how to make it. It's all in batiks. It's got a nice extra pieced portion on the back here. But today you don't have to make it, you can win it. And it's very easy to enter the giveaway. Just click the link below that says giveaway and put in your name and your email address. And remember, we can send this to anyone in the world. So good luck. Now, if you like our tutorials and you want to support us, the best thing you can do is subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would really help us out. Happy quilting!